Welcome, traveler. We're glad you're here. Every story you hear is made with care and passion. If you enjoy it, please like, subscribe, and check out the other adventures waiting for you on our channel. Your support means the world. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the story. The emergency klaxon's wail cut through ESS Sovereign's Pride's night cycle as Admiral Captain Aldrich Thorne's boots hit the deck plating. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in amber as he moved toward the bridge, muscle memory guiding him through passages he could navigate blind. "Admiral, to the bridge," came Lieutenant Nora Stellaris' voice through the ship's communication system. "Priority message drone arrival." The bridge hummed with controlled activity as the Night Watch maintained their stations. Stellaris manipulated the holographic display with practiced precision, highlighting the coordinates where an Earth Fleet courier drone had dropped from quantum space. "Message from Tantalus System, Admiral," she reported. "Transmitted 9 weeks ago via commercial transport." The holographic projector revealed Administrator Korvac of Tantalus Trading Post, his face showing strain and exhaustion. His voice carried the edge of someone who'd been managing a crisis far beyond his training. "Any Earth Fleet vessel receiving this transmission. Administrator Korvac requesting immediate intervention under Colonial Protection Act provisions. Indigenous Sarathi forces have acquired advanced weapons and are conducting coordinated attacks against our installations. We have sustained significant casualties and facility damage. Situation has escalated beyond civilian capabilities. Request military assessment and appropriate response." The message concluded with tactical coordinates and preliminary damage assessments. Message. "Authentication?" Thorne asked. "Confirmed through Earth Fleet transport logs, sir. But 9 weeks transmission delay means current conditions may have changed significantly." Thorne studied the tactical display showing their current position relative to the Tantalus system. "Navigation. Plot course for Tantalus. Best possible. Speed. Aye, sir. Estimated arrival in 37 hours at maximum sustainable velocity. All department heads to briefing room in 20 minutes. As the fleet adjusted course, Thorne considered the implications. Colonial Protection Act required reasonable assistance to Earth civilian installations under attack, but provided limited guidance when non-spacefaring species acquired advanced weapons. 9 weeks ago, the situation might have been containable. Now, they were heading into unknown circumstances with outdated intelligence. The great game of frontier politics had claimed another pawn, and Earth Fleet would arrive to clean up the consequences. Lieutenant Commander Kai Raven's Tactical Analysis Laboratory occupied a reinforced section of Deck 7, its walls lined with equipment designed to dissect the technological secrets of Earth's enemies. This morning, those enemies were proving uncomfortably familiar. Weapon fragments from the Swakin depot covered his analysis table like pieces of a puzzle he was only beginning to understand. Each component told a story of systematic technology transfer that challenged everything he thought he knew about arms dealing in contested space. "Molecular analysis complete," he murmured to his recording system, rotating a plasma rifle component. "Under magnification. Manufacturing tolerances indicate sophisticated industrial capabilities. Energy discharge patterns consistent with Type 7 Earth Fleet specifications." The door chimed, and Commander Marcus Blackwood entered carrying coffee and the expression of someone who'd been managing fleet logistics since before dawn. "Progress, Kai?" "Disturbing progress." Raven activated the holographic display, showing molecular signatures that painted uncomfortable pictures. These weapons weren't captured or stolen. They're Earth military technology specifically modified for operation by forces with different industrial standards. Different how? Power coupling modifications for non-Earth energy grids, interface adaptations for different ergonomic requirements, simplified maintenance protocols that don't require Earth Fleet technical training. Raven highlighted specific modifications that revealed systematic engineering. Someone with access to current Earth Fleet specifications is producing weapons specifically designed for non-spacefaring species. Blackwood studied the analysis with growing concern. Mass production or limited runs? The metallurgy signatures suggest large-scale manufacturing. Multiple production facilities, coordinated specifications, standardized modification patterns. This isn't random arms dealing. It's systematic military technology transfer. To what end? That's what worries me. Raven displayed a comparison chart showing modification patterns across multiple weapon types. The adaptations create dependency. Critical components require specialized maintenance. Ammunition needs specific manufacturing tolerances. Targeting. Systems need regular calibration that only the original manufacturer can provide. Someone's creating clients, not customers. Exactly. And Commander. Raven's voice carried the weight of unwelcome discovery. I'm detecting these same modification patterns in weapon fragments from 3 different sectors. This isn't isolated to our patrol area. The implications settled between them like a toxic presence. If systematic technology transfer was occurring across multiple sectors, Earth was facing coordinated policy rather than random smuggling. Someone was using Earth military technology to manipulate non-spacefaring species throughout contested space. Recommendations? I need more data. The Tantalus situation might provide answers about who's behind this and what they're trying to accomplish. Admiral's briefing in 10 minutes. Bring everything. As Blackwood left, Raven continued his analysis. Each new discovery painting darker pictures of systematic exploitation using Earth technology for purposes that remained ominously unclear. The main briefing room's holographic displays showed the Tantalus system in 3-dimensional detail. Twin stars casting harsh shadows across an asteroid field that had been transformed into commercial installations and indigenous settlements. Colonial. Protection Act requires reasonable assistance to Earth civilian installations under unprovoked attack, Thorne began, addressing his senior staff with the calm authority that had carried them through dozens of similar crises. But the Act doesn't specify response protocols when non-spacefaring species acquire military-grade technology. Lieutenant Commander Zara Voss consulted her intelligence assessment. Pre-departure files indicate minimal previous contact with the Sarathi. Initial surveys suggested advanced technological capabilities, sophisticated manufacturing, complex electronics, industrial infrastructure, but no evidence of space-based military systems or faster-than-light travel. Assessment reliability? Limited. Intelligence on non-spacefaring species typically relies on orbital observation rather than direct contact. Our information may be incomplete or outdated. Raven displayed his weapons analysis for the assembled staff. The fragments from Swakin show systematic technology transfer using Earth fleet specifications. If the Sarathi have acquired similar weapons, we may be facing systematically armed resistance rather than random indigenous aggression. Major Kane Steele leaned forward. Sir, if non-spacefaring species are acquiring Earth military technology, that represents a fundamental shift in threat assessment for all frontier operations. Commander Magnus Ironwright's gruff voice carried practical concerns. Admiral, Storm's End is still operating with jury-rigged repairs from Swakin. If we're facing extended combat operations, our maintenance capabilities are limited. How limited? Hull patches are holding, but we're running low on replacement armor plating. Weapon systems are fully operational, but ammunition reserves are key. At 70% after the depot engagement, life support systems are stable, but we've jury-rigged atmospheric processors using salvaged components. Commander Lydia Cross added medical considerations. We have adequate medical supplies for routine operations, but extended combat will strain our trauma treatment capabilities. The 3 crew members killed at Swakin have been processed, but their loss affects operational efficiency. Thorne absorbed the reports while studying tactical projections. Operating parameters? Nearest Earth fleet facility is 17 days travel at best sustainable speed, Stellaris reported. Emergency resupply would require minimum 4 weeks round trip, assuming immediate response to our request. Communication with Earth Command? Last courier drone departed 6 weeks ago. Next scheduled communication window is 3 weeks hence, assuming we maintain current patrol schedule. The isolation was complete. 7 ships, operating months from any support, facing unknown circumstances with limited resources and no possibility of guidance from Earth Command. Assessment options, Thorne said. Voss consulted her analysis. 3 scenarios, Admiral. First, legitimate indigenous aggression requiring protective intervention. Second, manipulated conflict designed to draw Earth Fleet into predetermined response. Third, systematic testing of Earth Fleet capabilities by unknown adversaries. Most likely. The timing concerns me, sir. 9 weeks ago, someone knew to expect Earth Fleet response. The weapons analysis suggests coordination spanning multiple sectors. The pattern indicates systematic manipulation rather than random conflict. But we respond regardless. Yes, sir. Colonial Protection Act requires it, and civilian casualties demand immediate response regardless of underlying causes. Thorne made the decision with characteristic speed. We proceed to Tantalus under the assumption that someone expects our arrival and has prepared accordingly. Modify standard approach procedures, maintain enhanced readiness, expect systematic opposition rather than random indigenous conflict. Rules of engagement: protect civilian installations, minimize indigenous casualties, determine the source of weapons technology, preserve evidence for later analysis. Questions? Steele raised his hand. Sir, if we're facing Earth military technology operated by trained personnel, standard tactics may be compromised. Noted. Develop alternative approaches that account for enemy knowledge of our capabilities. Anything else? The senior staff exchanged glances but remained silent. Dismissed. Department heads, prepare your sections for extended operations under uncertain conditions. As the briefing concluded, Thorne remained behind with Blackwood to discuss command decisions that couldn't be shared with the full staff. Marcus, what aren't you telling me about our supply situation? We can sustain current operations for 6 weeks maximum. After that, we start rationing ammunition and reducing patrol efficiency. If we face extended combat at Tantalus, our operational timeline contracts significantly. And Storm's End. The hull patches will hold under normal operations, but combat stress could cause catastrophic failure. Her weapon systems are operating at reduced efficiency due to structural damage from Swakin. Recommendation: complete the Tantalus mission, but avoid extended engagement if possible. We need proper shipyard facilities, not battlefield repairs. Thorne nodded. The mathematics of Frontier Command were always unforgiving. Insufficient resources, inadequate support, impossible missions conducted under conditions that made success increasingly unlikely. Maintain current speed. Prepare for engagement, but prioritize mission completion over tactical superiority. Lieutenant Nora Stellaris bent over her navigation console in the ship's cartography section, comparing stellar reference points with preloaded navigation data that told disturbing stories about information accuracy in contested space. Computer. Display Tantalus system approach vectors used by previous Earth fleet operations. The holographic display revealed 3 different approach patterns used by Earth vessels over the past 18 months. Each route avoided different hazards: asteroid fields, sensor shadows, defensive installations, but the pattern showed systematic evolution, suggesting someone was tracking Earth fleet navigation preferences. Interesting, she murmured, highlighting course corrections that revealed hidden intelligence gathering. Each approach route had been optimized based on lessons learned from previous operations, but the lessons appeared to be shared with parties who shouldn't have access to Earth fleet tactical data. Her communication panel chimed with a message from the engineering section. Commander Ironwright was requesting navigation assistance with fuel consumption calculations. Stellaris here. Lieutenant, I need precise fuel consumption projections for 3 different approach scenarios. The Admiral wants options that don't follow standard fleet protocols. Understood. Transmitting calculation requirements now. As she worked through the mathematics, Stellaris discovered navigation anomalies that suggested systematic surveillance of Earth fleet operations. The fuel consumption patterns, approach vector modifications, and course corrections all indicated that someone had been studying Earth fleet navigation procedures with disturbing thoroughness. Commander Ironwright, I'm detecting systematic patterns in previous navigation data that suggest external monitoring of our operations. What kind of patterns? Course corrections that appear random, but actually optimize for surveillance from specific observation points. It's subtle, but someone's been tracking our navigation preferences and using that information to predict our operational patterns. Evidence? The Tantalus approach vectors show progressive modification based on lessons that should have been classified to Earth fleet only. But if external parties had access to our navigation improvements, they could predict our current approach patterns with disturbing accuracy. Ironwright's voice carried growing concern. Lieutenant, that suggests systematic intelligence gathering spanning months. Yes, sir. And if they know our navigation patterns, they know when and how we'll arrive at Tantalus. Compile your analysis and forward it to Commander Voss immediately. This information needs to reach the Admiral before we arrive in system. As Stellaris compiled her evidence, she realized that her navigation analysis had uncovered another piece of the intelligence puzzle. Someone wasn't just providing weapons to non-spacefaring species. They were systematically studying Earth fleet operations to optimize their manipulation strategies. The great game had become personal, and Earth fleet was playing against opponents who knew their moves before they made them. Commander Magnus Ironwright moved through ESS Storm's End's engineering section like a surgeon examining a patient who'd survived trauma through luck and stubbornness. Emergency patches covered hull breaches that should have been fatal, while jury-rigged systems maintained life support through innovations that violated half the regulations in Earth fleet manuals. Status report, he requested from Chief Petty Officer Walsh. Hull patches, holding at 93% structural integrity. Atmospheric recycling systems operating at reduced efficiency due to salvaged component integration. Main engines stable, but we've lost redundancy in the port manifold system. Translation? She'll hold together under normal operations, but combat stress could cause cascading failures. We're one plasma hit away from critical systems failure. Ironwright consulted his portable diagnostic scanner, reviewing system integration that told stories of battlefield innovation. Ammunition stores? 71% capacity. We expended significant ordnance at Swakin and replacement supplies are 17 days away minimum. Life support margins? Adequate for current crew complement, but reduced efficiency means we're operating with minimal redundancy. Any casualties requiring extended life support would strain our capabilities. The mathematics were unforgiving. Storm's End could function under current conditions, but combat operations would push her systems beyond safe operational parameters. If Tantalus required extended engagement, they'd be fighting with damaged ships using limited supplies against enemies armed with Earth technology. Engineering assessment for extended operations? Possible, but inadvisable. We need proper shipyard facilities, not battlefield repairs. The hull patches will hold under normal stress, but plasma fire could breach them catastrophically. Recommendations? Complete the mission, but avoid extended engagement. These repairs are temporary solutions that buy us time, not permanent fixes. As Ironwright compiled his assessment, he considered the broader implications of operating damaged ships in hostile space. Earth fleet's expansion into contested territory depended on technological superiority and tactical flexibility, but both advantages were meaningless if ships couldn't maintain operational integrity. Chief Walsh, prepare contingency repair procedures for combat damage. Assume we'll take hits and need immediate emergency response. Already working on it, sir, but our spare parts inventory is limited. Then we make do with what we have. Improvise, adapt, overcome. Yes, sir, no problems, only solutions. Ironwright smiled grimly. His engineering philosophy had served him well for 20 years. There were always solutions if you were willing to be creative and accept risks that peacetime regulations would never permit. But creativity had limits, and they were approaching. Those limits faster than he'd prefer to admit. The Tantalus system materialized around ESS Sovereign's Pride as she dropped from quantum drive at the edge of the binary star's gravitational influence. Twin suns cast harsh double shadows across an asteroid field that had been transformed into a battleground. Sensor sweep complete, Stellaris reported from her navigation station. detecting multiple energy signatures consistent with plasma weapons discharge, significant debris fields around commercial installations. Fleet status? All ships operational and maintaining formation. Storm's End reports stable systems, but her hull patches are showing stress indicators from the quantum transition. Thorne studied the tactical display as information updated in real time. Commander Voss, communication, analysis. Detecting emergency broadcast beacons from Tantalus Trading Post. Automated distress signals have been transmitting for approximately 6 weeks. No active communication traffic detected. Weapon signatures? Raven's tactical analysis updated continuously as sensors gathered data. Confirmed Earth fleet weapon signatures throughout the asteroid field. Type 7 plasma projectors, Type 12 heavy weapons, orbital defense systems, all showing modification patterns consistent with SWACIN analysis. Indigenous installations? Multiple defensive positions throughout the outer asteroid belt. Sophisticated energy barriers protecting industrial complexes. Someone's provided the Sarathi with comprehensive defensive systems. The scope of the crisis became clear as sensor data revealed systematic militarization spanning the entire asteroid field. This wasn't random indigenous aggression. It was coordinated territorial control using Earth military technology. Admiral, Voss reported with growing concern. I'm detecting abandoned Nexus Consortium communication equipment throughout the system. Message storage devices show traffic ceased approximately 7 weeks ago. Final stored transmissions. References to contract completion and territorial arrangements finalized. Someone coordinated this situation and departed before we arrived. Approach options. Stellaris consulted her navigation analysis. Standard approach vectors would take us through multiple defensive zones. The Sarathi have positioned their weapons to cover traditional Earth fleet approach patterns. Alternative routes? Asteroid field approach using sensor shadows. More difficult navigation, but we avoid defensive coverage until we're closer to the trading post. Fuel consumption? 30% increase due to complex maneuvering, but tactically advantageous. Thorne made the decision with characteristic speed. Execute asteroid field approach. All ships, enhanced defensive posture. Assume hostile forces have detailed knowledge of our capabilities. As the fleet maneuvered through the asteroid field, the scope of systematic manipulation became undeniable. Someone had provided the Sarathi with weapons specifically designed to counter Earth fleet tactics, then departed before accountability. The great game had become personal, and Earth fleet was walking into a trap that had been months in the making. The shuttle Resolute approached the damaged commercial facility through debris fields that spoke of sustained plasma bombardment. Emergency lighting cast irregular shadows across hull plating scorched by weapons fire, while emergency atmospheric containment fields sparkled where hull breaches had been sealed. Administrator Korvac met them in the facility's emergency command center, his appearance showing weeks of crisis management under impossible conditions. Emergency power provided minimal lighting for tactical displays showing red zones throughout the asteroid field. Admiral Thorne, thank God you received our courier transmission. Korvac's voice carried exhaustion mixed with desperate relief. The situation has exceeded every worst-case projection. Current status? Thorne asked, noting blast damage visible through the command center's reinforced viewports. 4 installations completely destroyed, 8 others under emergency lockdown. We've lost contact with outer mining operations for 3 weeks. The Sarathi aren't conducting raids anymore. They're implementing systematic territorial control. Casualties? 62 killed, 35 wounded evacuated to this facility. Medical supplies are running low, and our trauma treatment capabilities are overwhelmed. Blackwood studied damage reports on portable displays. Administrator, what changed? Our files indicated peaceful coexistence 6 months ago. 9 weeks ago, Nexus Consortium arrived with comprehensive commercial agreements. They claimed they could establish mutually beneficial relationships between our operations and Sarathi territorial interests. Specific arrangements? Nexus provided advanced mining equipment in exchange for refined materials. Standard commercial relationship. But they also claim to have negotiated territorial agreements that would prevent future conflicts. Steele examined tactical assessments with growing alarm. What kind of weapons are the Serathi using? See? For yourself, Korvac said, producing damaged weapon components recovered during the siege. Our security teams retrieved these before the outer installations were overrun. Raven's examination confirmed his worst fears immediately. Earth manufacture, Type 7 plasma projectors, Type 12 heavy weapons, orbital defense systems, all modified for different industrial standards, but definitely our technology. How would a non-spacefaring species acquire Earth military weapons? Korvac demanded. They didn't acquire them, Thorne said grimly. Someone provided them systematically. Cross approached from her medical examination of the facility's wounded. Admiral, the injury patterns suggest coordinated attacks using advanced tactical knowledge. The Serathi aren't just armed, they're trained. Evidence? Plasma burns from precise targeting of critical systems, coordinated assault patterns that suggest military planning, timing that indicates detailed knowledge of facility defensive capabilities. The pattern was becoming undeniable. The Serathi hadn't simply acquired weapons, they'd received comprehensive military training to use them effectively against Earth installations. Administrator, Voss asked, were Nexus representatives still present when the attacks began? They departed 7 weeks ago, claimed their territorial mediation was complete, and both sides understood the new arrangements. What specific arrangements? Nexus told us they'd negotiated Serathi agreement to respect our territorial boundaries in exchange for acknowledgement of their expanded territorial claims. They said the weapons were for defensive purposes only. And they told the Serathi? According to their final briefing, they'd explained to the Serathi that our expansion required temporary territorial adjustments, but that proper defensive preparation might allow negotiated coexistence. The manipulation was complete. Nexus had convinced both sides that the other posed territorial threats, provided weapons to defend against those threats, then departed before the inevitable conflict. Back aboard the Sovereign's Pride, Raven's analysis laboratory had become a war room where the scope of systematic manipulation was being dissected with scientific precision. Weapon fragments, communication intercepts, and tactical data painted disturbing pictures of coordinated deception spanning months. Admiral, the weapons modifications reveal preparation extending far beyond simple arms dealing, he reported to Thorne in the ship's secure briefing room. Someone conducted extensive analysis of Serathi industrial capabilities, technological standards, and military requirements. Time frame? Minimum 6 months of preparation. The modifications are too sophisticated for rapid development. Power coupling adaptations, interface ergonomics, maintenance protocol simplification. This required detailed study of Serathi capabilities and limitations. Thorne studied the technical analysis with growing concern. Assessment of strategic purpose. Creating controlled dependency while testing adaptation capabilities. The weapons require ongoing technical support that only the manufacturer can provide, but they're sophisticated enough to reveal how quickly non-spacefaring species can develop advanced tactical capabilities when provided with appropriate technology. Implications? Someone's using Earth military technology to conduct systematic experiments on non-spacefaring species while generating commercial profits from the resulting conflicts. The accusations hung in the briefing room's recycled air like toxic gas. If Earth fleet technology was being used for systematic experimentation on species that trusted Earth's protection, the moral implications were staggering. But Admiral, Raven continued, displaying tactical innovations that challenged basic assumptions. The intelligence gathered reveals capabilities that fundamentally alter threat assessments for non-spacefaring species. Explain. Serathi adaptation to Earth. Weapons has exceeded all theoretical projections. They've developed tactical applications that our designers never anticipated, found defensive techniques that challenge our assumptions about technology integration. Raven highlighted specific innovations that demonstrated sophisticated military thinking. They're using our plasma weapons in conjunction with their existing industrial capabilities to create hybrid defensive systems that are more effective than either technology alone. Strategic significance? From a tactical perspective, this intelligence is invaluable. It reveals that non-spacefaring species can become military equals when provided with appropriate technology and training. But gaining this intelligence required systematic exploitation of species that trusted our protection. The moral complexity was undeniable. The weapons analysis had generated crucial intelligence about non-spacefaring species' military potential, but that intelligence came from systematic manipulation that violated every principle Earth claimed to represent. Recommendations? The tactical innovations should be classified and incorporated into defensive protocols. But we need to stop the systematic exploitation while ensuring similar intelligence doesn't fall into hostile hands. And if other powers are conducting similar experiments, then we may need this intelligence to counter their operations. But continued tolerance makes us complicit in systematic exploitation. As Raven compiled his final analysis, he understood that his discoveries had created an impossible choice between strategic advantage and ethical integrity that would define Earth's approach to non-spacefaring species throughout contested space. The shuttle Resolute approached the primary Sarathi settlement on asteroid Gamma 7 through defensive fields that challenged every assumption about non-spacefaring military capabilities. Sophisticated energy barriers protected advanced industrial complexes, while weapons emplacements requiring complex technical knowledge operated in coordination with automated defense systems. "Sir," Steele observed, checking his equipment with growing respect for their hosts, "if the Sarathi have integrated Earth weapons with their existing technological capabilities, we may be facing fundamentally different opposition than anticipated." "Noted, but we approach diplomatically first. Cross-monitored biological scanners from the medical station. Atmospheric composition suitable for human operation, detecting extensive electromagnetic signatures suggesting complex electronic systems, integration throughout the settlement." The shuttle landed in a designated area, surrounded by defensive positions that demonstrated sophisticated military engineering. Sarathi representatives approached with controlled movements that suggested advanced organizational discipline and tactical training. The lead Sarathi, distinguished by governmental insignia indicating high administrative authority, spoke in fluent Earth standard with the precision of advanced diplomatic training. "Admiral Thorne, the Nexus representatives told us you would evaluate our territorial defensive preparations. You were expecting us? Nexus Consortium informed us that Earth Fleet would assess our defensive capabilities after territorial agreements were finalized." Steele's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. Pre-planned conversations in first contact situations indicated systematic manipulation rather than spontaneous contact. "What territorial agreements?" Thorne asked carefully. Nexus explained that Earth commercial expansion required Sarathi territorial adjustments, but that adequate defensive preparation might allow negotiated coexistence rather than forced displacement. Cross stepped forward with medical authority, designed to reduce tension. "May we speak with your leadership? We'd like to understand your perspective on recent events. Defense Minister Thyrak will meet with you." But he has serious concerns about Earth territorial intentions and the scope of planned commercial expansion. As they walked through the settlement, Thorne observed technology integration that demonstrated centuries of sophisticated development. Advanced weapons systems operated alongside complex manufacturing equipment. Communication networks requiring electromagnetic expertise functioned beside automated industrial facilities. "How long have you possessed these defensive weapons?" he asked. Nexus provided them 2 months ago when they learned of planned commercial expansion into traditional Sarathi territory. They said defensive preparation was essential for our people's survival. The manipulation timeline was becoming clear. Nexus had convinced the Sarathi that Earth planned territorial displacement, provided weapons to defend against that expansion, then positioned themselves as mediators in the conflict they'd created. The governmental complex combined advanced architectural aesthetics with cutting-edge technology in ways that demonstrated sophisticated organizational capabilities spanning generations. Complex tactical displays integrated with holographic projection systems, while advanced seating arrangements facilitated strategic planning sessions requiring extensive technical coordination. Defense Minister Thyrak projected governmental authority through advanced administrative bearing. His insignia suggested high political status within complex governmental structures, while his tactical display comprehension revealed sophisticated strategic education and extensive military experience. Admiral Thorne, Thyrak began with careful diplomatic formality. Nexus representatives explained that Earth commercial operations require comprehensive Sirathi territorial displacement to accommodate industrial development. We wish to discuss terms that might allow our people's continued existence. I represent Earth Fleet, not commercial interests. What specific territorial expansion were you told to expect? Complete displacement of all Sirathi settlements to provide unrestricted access for Earth industrial development. Nexus said resistance would be futile without adequate defensive preparation, but that sufficient weapons might allow negotiated survival rather than total elimination. Blackwood consulted his datapad, cross-referencing colonial law with territorial protection protocols. Defense Minister Thyrak, under Earth Colonial Protection Act, non-spacefaring species have recognized territorial rights. Commercial operations cannot proceed without negotiated agreements that protect indigenous interests. Nexus suggested Earth Fleet would support commercial expansion regardless of indigenous concerns. Nexus provided deliberately false information, Thorne said with calm authority. Earth Fleet protects both legitimate commercial interests and recognized territorial rights. Thyrak's expression shifted to display diplomatic confusion mixed with growing strategic anger. Then you will not support forced displacement of Sirathi settlements for commercial expansion? Not without legitimate agreements negotiated through proper channels that protect territorial sovereignty. And if commercial operations attempt unauthorized territorial expansion, Earth Fleet is authorized to protect territorial rights against unauthorized commercial expansion under Colonial Protection Act provisions. Thyrak conferred with his advisors in rapid, complex language that suggested sophisticated political organization and advanced governmental administration. Cross watched the interaction with growing recognition of complex social and political systems rivaling Earth's own administrative capabilities. Admiral, Thyrak said finally, Nexus representatives claimed that Earth Fleet would eliminate indigenous resistance to commercial territorial requirements. They provided systematically false information. Then we have been deliberately deceived about Earth intentions and territorial policies. Systematically deceived for commercial profit, Raven confirmed. Thyrak's demeanor shifted to display diplomatic embarrassment mixed with strategic outrage. We have acquired defensive weapons based on completely false information about commercial expansion threats. What specific weapons systems? Steele asked. Energy weapons, defensive systems, communication, networks, orbital monitoring equipment, tactical coordination systems, all provided in exchange for territorial access agreements and long-term resource extraction commitments. The manipulation was comprehensive. Nexus had convinced the Sirathi that Earth planned total territorial displacement, sold them weapons to defend against that displacement, then negotiated commercial agreements that provided Nexus with territorial access they'd claimed Earth required. Minister Thyrak, Thorne said carefully, Earth Fleet is prepared to guarantee Sirathi territorial rights under Colonial Protection Act provisions. But those weapon systems represent potential threats to legitimate commercial operations and our defense against future unauthorized expansion attempts by other commercial interests. Earth Fleet will guarantee your territorial integrity through legal enforcement. But the weapons must be secured to prevent incidents with legitimate commercial activities. Thyrak consulted with his advisors again, their complex discussion revealing political sophistication and administrative competence that demonstrated advanced governmental capabilities developed over centuries. Admiral, Thyrak finally replied, we will consider your proposals seriously. But the weapon systems have been integrated into our territorial defense networks. Immediate disarmament would leave us vulnerable to the threats Nexus warned us about. What specific threats? Nexus warned that other commercial interests might exploit Sarathi weakness if we disarmed, and that Earth fleet might not arrive quickly enough to prevent territorial displacement by hostile forces. Another manipulation layer revealed itself. Nexus had created dependency on their weapons while simultaneously maintaining the threats that justified continued dependency. Commander Lydia Cross moved through the Sarathi medical facility with the professional courtesy of someone who recognized advanced capabilities when she encountered them. The medical equipment demonstrated sophisticated understanding of biological systems, while treatment protocols revealed medical knowledge that rivaled Earth fleet standards. "Your medical capabilities are impressive," she told the Sarathi chief medical officer, a distinguished figure whose governmental insignia indicated high administrative status within their health system. "We have developed our medical knowledge over many generations," the chief medical officer replied with professional pride. "But Nexus warned us that Earth commercial expansion might disrupt our medical supply chains and require defensive preparation." "What specific disruptions?" "Territorial displacement would separate our medical facilities from essential resource extraction areas. Nexus said Earth commercial operations would prioritize industrial development over indigenous medical requirements." Cross examined the medical equipment with growing respect for Sarathi capabilities. "Your technology appears entirely self-sufficient. Why would territorial adjustments affect your medical operations?" Nexus explained that Earth industrial development would contaminate water supplies and atmospheric composition, making traditional medical practices ineffective. They said defensive weapons were necessary to protect medical facilities from environmental contamination. The medical manipulation was as systematic as the military deception. Nexus had convinced the Sarathi that Earth expansion would destroy their medical capabilities, creating artificial dependency on Nexus protection while generating profits from arms sales. Chief Medical Officer, Earth Colonial Protection Act requires environmental protection for indigenous populations. Industrial development cannot proceed without environmental impact assessments that protect indigenous health. Nexus said Earth fleet would support industrial development regardless of environmental consequences. Nexus provided false information designed to generate weapons sales. The chief medical officer's expression revealed growing understanding of systematic deception. "Then our medical facilities are not threatened by Earth commercial expansion?" "Not under legitimate commercial operations conducted according to Earth Colonial Protection Act requirements, and the weapons we acquired to protect our medical capabilities were sold to you based on deliberately false threats that served commercial interests rather than your protection." As Cross completed her medical assessment, she realized that the manipulation extended beyond military concerns to every aspect of Sarathi society. Nexus had systematically created artificial dependencies while positioning themselves as the solution to problems they'd invented. Major Kane Steele moved through the Sarathi defensive positions with the professional eye of someone who'd spent 20 years evaluating military capabilities. The defensive installations demonstrated tactical sophistication that challenged basic assumptions about non-spacefaring military potential. "Your defensive coordination is impressive," he told the Sarathi defense coordinator, whose tactical display comprehension revealed extensive military education. Nexus provided comprehensive training programs when they delivered the defensive systems, the coordinator replied. They said Earth fleet assault tactics required sophisticated defensive preparation. "What specific assault tactics?" "Orbital bombardment followed by ground assault using superior firepower to overwhelm defensive positions. Nexus said our traditional defensive methods would be ineffective against Earth military technology." Steele examined the defensive positions, with growing recognition of tactical innovations that exceeded Earth fleet expectations. "Your defensive integration demonstrates capabilities that suggest extensive military development. We have maintained defensive capabilities for generations, but Nexus said our traditional methods were inadequate against Earth fleet assault procedures." Did Nexus provide specific intelligence about Earth fleet tactics? Detailed tactical manuals, assault pattern analysis, weak point identification for Earth fleet equipment. They said this intelligence was essential for survival against planned territorial displacement operations. The tactical manipulation was comprehensive. Nexus had provided detailed intelligence about Earth fleet capabilities while convincing the Sarathi that those capabilities would be used against them, creating artificial threats that justified systematic arms sales. Defense Coordinator, Earth. Fleet conducts territorial operations under Colonial Protection Act provisions that require indigenous consent. Forced displacement is prohibited without extreme circumstances. Nexus said the Colonial Protection Act contained exceptions that allowed forced displacement for commercial development. Nexus provided false information designed to generate weapons sales and territorial access agreements. The Defense Coordinator's expression revealed tactical understanding of systematic deception. Then Earth fleet will not conduct orbital bombardment and ground assault operations against our settlements? Not without legitimate cause under Colonial Protection Act provisions. And the defensive preparations we made based on Nexus intelligence were based on deliberately false threat assessments that served commercial interests rather than legitimate security concerns. As Steele completed his security assessment, he realized that the Sarathi had developed defensive capabilities that exceeded Earth fleet projections, but based on systematic deception rather than legitimate security requirements. The confrontation occurred aboard ESS Sovereign's Pride in the main briefing room, where Admiral Thorne had arranged for Administrator Korvac and Defense Minister Thirak to meet under Earth fleet mediation. The absence of Nexus representation was deliberate. They had departed the system 7 weeks earlier, leaving both sides to discover the scope of their manipulation without the architects present to explain themselves. Nexus Consortium systematically deceived both parties, Thorne announced with calm authority that carried the weight of documented evidence. They convinced Administrator Korvac that Sarathi territorial expansion threatened commercial operations. They convinced Defense Minister Thirak that Earth commercial expansion threatened Sarathi territorial integrity. Both claims were deliberately false. Administrator Korvac's exhaustion gave way to controlled anger as the manipulation became clear. They told us the Sarathi were planning aggressive territorial expansion that would disrupt our mining operations. They offered protection services and advanced security equipment to prevent conflict. Defense Minister Thirak listened with diplomatic composure that masked growing outrage. Nexus told us Earth planned complete territorial displacement to accommodate industrial development. They said defensive weapons were essential for survival and provided detailed intelligence about Earth fleet assault procedures. Both sets of claims were systematically false, Thorne confirmed with fatherly patience that carried unmistakable command authority. Earth Colonial Protection Act requires negotiated agreements that protect both commercial interests and indigenous territorial rights. Neither forced displacement nor territorial expansion can proceed without mutual consent. Blackwood approached the situation with practical efficiency, reviewing documentation while seeking workable solutions. The weapons exist and cannot be uninvented. The territorial tensions have been created and must be addressed. We need agreements that account for current realities while preventing future manipulation. But the fundamental problem remains, Cross observed with medical directness. The Sarathi now possess military capabilities that have been integrated into their defensive systems. The technology transfer cannot be reversed. The resolution required acknowledging profit-driven manipulation, while establishing frameworks that prevented future exploitation. The Sarathi would retain their weapons under Earth fleet monitoring protocols that accounted for communication delays, scheduled inspections, rather than impossible real-time oversight. Territorial agreements would be renegotiated to recognize Sarathi sovereignty while protecting legitimate commercial interests under Earth fleet guarantee. The weapons systems will remain under Sarathi control, Thorne announced, subject to Earth fleet inspection protocols designed to ensure they're used for legitimate defensive purposes rather than territorial expansion. Commercial operations will continue under agreements that acknowledge Sarathi territorial sovereignty. And protection against future commercial manipulation? Thirak asked. Earth fleet will maintain patrol schedules that include Tantalus system. Any commercial operations requiring territorial adjustments must be negotiated through Earth fleet mediation rather than direct commercial pressure. What about compensation for the casualties and facility damage? Korvac demanded. Nexus Consortium will be held accountable for systematic deception that created this conflict. Earth fleet will pursue appropriate legal action and compensation through colonial courts. The agreement satisfied immediate requirements while establishing precedents for Earth fleet operations throughout contested space, but the strategic implications would remain classified at the highest levels, following historical patterns where colonial powers used knowledge gained through questionable means while publicly maintaining moral authority. In his private quarters, that evening, Raven faced the moral complexity that would define his approach to frontier command ethics. His analysis had revealed systematic exploitation using Earth technology, but the strategic implications created choices that challenged every principle he'd sworn to uphold. Personal log, supplemental, he recorded carefully, knowing his words, would influence Earth policies throughout contested space. Tactical analysis reveals systematic technology transfer designed to test non-spacefaring species adaptation to modified Earth weapons while generating commercial profits from artificially created conflicts. He paused, considering the career implications of his assessment and its potential impact on Earth's approach to non-spacefaring species throughout the galaxy. The tactical intelligence gained is strategically invaluable. Sirathi adaptation to Earth weapons exceeded all theoretical projections, revealing defensive capabilities that challenge basic assumptions about non-spacefaring species' military potential. Their tactical innovations demonstrate that advanced, non-spacefaring species can become military equals when provided with appropriate technology and training. However, this intelligence was obtained through systematic exploitation of species that trusted Earth's protection. Continued tolerance of such operations would make Earth complicit in systematic manipulation for commercial profit. Raven studied the weapon fragments on his desk, evidence of impossible choices between strategic advantage and ethical integrity. Recommendation: classify the tactical innovations and incorporate them into defensive protocols while ensuring such exploitation is never repeated. Use the knowledge to protect both Earth forces and non-spacefaring species from future manipulation. But, Admiral, he continued, his voice carrying the weight of unwelcome strategic reality, if other powers are conducting similar experiments, we may need this intelligence to counter their operations. The question becomes whether we can maintain our moral authority while acting on knowledge gained through systematic exploitation. As he sealed the log entry, Raven understood that his discoveries had revealed the fundamental tension of frontier command, achieving strategic objectives while maintaining ethical principles under conditions that made both increasingly difficult. The weapons fragments remained on his desk like accusations, proof of Earth's willingness to benefit from systematic exploitation, but also proof of threats that might require that knowledge for survival. Lieutenant Commander Zara Voss worked through the night in her intelligence analysis center, correlating communication patterns that revealed the scope of systematic manipulation, extending far beyond the Tantalus system. Message traffic analysis painted disturbing pictures of coordinated operations spanning multiple sectors. Admiral, she reported to Thorne in the secure communication facility, I've completed analysis of Nexus communication traffic recovered from their abandoned equipment. Findings? Systematic coordination spanning at least 8 months. Nexus maintained separate communication channels with multiple commercial installations and indigenous populations simultaneously, creating artificial conflicts while positioning themselves as mediators. Voss displayed communication timelines that revealed methodical manipulation. They knew our patrol schedules with accuracy that suggests access to Earth fleet operational planning. Their operations were timed to create optimal conditions for our arrival. Conflicts would be established but not resolved, requiring Earth fleet intervention under Colonial Protection Act provisions. Evidence of the intelligence leak? More than a leak, Admiral. Someone provided Nexus with comprehensive intelligence about our fleet capabilities, patrol schedules, and standard operational procedures. They knew exactly when we'd arrive at Tantalus and how we'd respond to the situation they'd created. The implications were staggering. If Earth fleet operations were being systematically monitored and manipulated, every mission became potentially compromised from the planning stage. Assessment of operational security? The communication pattern suggests surveillance spanning our entire patrol area. Nexus operations have been coordinated with our movements since departure from Earth space. Other affected systems? I'm detecting similar communication patterns in 3 other sectors, where we've encountered modified Earth weapons. The Tantalus operation appears to be part of a larger intelligence gathering program designed to test Earth fleet responses under controlled conditions. Thorne absorbed the implications while considering the strategic intelligence gathered through systematic exploitation. Recommendations? Immediate investigation of operational security at Earth Fleet Command level. Someone with access to classified planning information is coordinating our operations with commercial interests. Continue classification of tactical intelligence gained, but implement counter-surveillance protocols for future operations. And the weapons technology transfer? The source has to be active Earth Fleet manufacturing facilities. The metallurgy. Signatures and modification patterns require access to current production specifications. Someone is using Earth military resources to conduct systematic experiments on non-spacefaring species. As Voss compiled her intelligence assessment, she realized that the Tantalus situation was merely one example of galaxy-wide manipulation designed to test Earth fleet capabilities while generating commercial profits from artificial conflicts. The Great Game had become systematic, and Earth fleet was playing against opponents who knew their strategies before they were implemented. Commander Magnus Ironwright supervised repair operations on ESS Storm's End while calculating the mathematical realities of frontier maintenance. Emergency patches held structural integrity, but the solutions were temporary fixes that bought time rather than permanent restoration. Status report, he requested from Chief Petty Officer Walsh as they examined hull reinforcements that would never pass Earth fleet inspection standards. Hull patches holding at 91% structural integrity, but were using materials that weren't designed for primary structural support. Main engine stable, but we've lost redundancy in multiple systems. Translation for the Admiral? She'll complete this mission, but we need proper shipyard facilities within 4 weeks, or we start experiencing cascading system failures. Ironwright consulted his engineering assessment while reviewing supply inventory that told stark stories about operational limitations. Ammunition reserves? 68% after Tantalus operations. Plasma cannon efficiency reduced due to power coupling damage that we can't properly repair with available components. Life support systems? Functioning, but we're operating with minimal safety margins. Any major damage would require emergency evacuation to other ships. The mathematics were unforgiving. Storm's End could continue operations, but each engagement reduced her capabilities while repair options remained limited by supply constraints and technological requirements that couldn't be met in frontier space. Recommendations for continued operations? Complete current mission parameters, but avoid extended combat if possible. We need resupply and proper maintenance facilities, not continued battlefield repairs. Engineering assessment for extended patrol? Inadvisable. We're pushing these systems beyond safe operational parameters. Success depends on avoiding situations that require full combat capability. As Ironwright submitted his assessment, he considered the broader implications of operating damaged ships with limited supplies against enemies armed with Earth technology. Technological superiority meant nothing if ships couldn't maintain operational integrity under combat stress. Chief Walsh, prepare contingency procedures for emergency repairs under combat conditions. Assume we'll face additional engagements before reaching proper facilities. Already working on it, sir. But our options are limited by available materials and safety considerations. Then we do what frontier engineers do best. Improvise solutions that violate regulations but keep people alive. Yes, sir. No problems, only solutions. But Ironwright knew that even the best solutions had limits, and they were approaching those limits faster than strategic planning had anticipated. 5 days later, as the fleet prepared to depart Tantalus system, the Resolution had established new frameworks for Earth fleet operations while raising questions that would influence policy for decades. The diplomatic success masked strategic concerns that would shape Earth's approach to contested space. The tactical analysis reveals systematic vulnerabilities in our approach to non-spacefaring species assessment, Raven reported to Thorne in his final briefing. Traditional assumptions about technological adaptation capabilities have been completely invalidated. Strategic recommendations: enhanced screening for unauthorized technology transfer, improved intelligence gathering about actual rather than assumed non-spacefaring species capabilities, and revised threat assessment protocols that account for rapid technological adaptation when appropriate training is provided. And the ethical implications of using intelligence gained through systematic exploitation. Raven faced the question that would define Earth's moral framework for expansion operations. Sir, the intelligence exists and reveals capabilities we must understand to protect both Earth interests and non-spacefaring species from future manipulation. But using that intelligence requires acknowledging that our strategic advantages sometimes come from questionable sources. Can we maintain moral authority while acting on such intelligence? Only if we ensure such exploitation never happens, again while using the knowledge to protect rather than exploit non-spacefaring species. The Sci-Fi demonstrated that advanced non-spacefaring species can become equals when provided with appropriate technology. Our responsibility is ensuring that transformation serves their interests rather than commercial manipulation. Thorne studied the classified assessments that would influence Earth's policies throughout contested space. Final recommendations: classify the tactical innovations and incorporate them into defensive protocols. Investigate the source of systematic technology transfer within Earth fleet manufacturing systems. Use the intelligence to prevent future exploitation while maintaining operational security about our discoveries. And if other powers are conducting similar experiments, then this intelligence becomes essential for countering their operations. The question isn't whether we can avoid moral complexity, but whether we can navigate it while maintaining our principles. As the fleet accelerated toward their next patrol sector, the Resolution of Tantalus established precedents that would echo throughout Earth's expansion into contested space. Non-spacefaring species possessed capabilities that challenged basic assumptions when provided with appropriate technology. Commercial manipulation could create conflicts that served strategic purposes while generating profits. Earth fleet operations were being systematically monitored by parties with access to classified planning information. The stars wheeled past, ESS Sovereign's Pride's viewports with the steady rhythm of ships carrying Earth's authority into a galaxy where moral complexity increased with every light year traveled from home. 7 ships, thousands of crew members, operating far beyond Earth's support network, while learning that their greatest challenges came not from enemy fleets, but from choices between strategic advantage and ethical integrity. In his final personal log entry, Raven recorded the lesson that would define his frontier service. The greatest tactical advantages often come from sources that challenge our ethical principles. The question isn't whether we can avoid moral complexity in contested space, but whether we can navigate that complexity while maintaining the principles that justify our expansion beyond Earth. The Sci-Fi taught us that non-spacefaring species can become equals when circumstances allow their capabilities to be properly expressed. Our responsibility is ensuring those circumstances serve their development rather than our strategic requirements. But in a galaxy where other powers may be conducting similar experiments, ignorance is not an option. We must understand the full scope of non-spacefaring species potential while ensuring that understanding is used to protect rather than exploit them. The tactical analysis from Tantalus would be classified at the highest levels, influencing Earth's approach to non-spacefaring species for generations, while remaining hidden from public scrutiny. The intelligence gathered through systematic exploitation would protect Earth forces and non-spacefaring species from future manipulation, but at the cost of acknowledging that strategic knowledge sometimes came from sources that violated stated principles. Such was the moral complexity of frontier command, achieving strategic objectives while maintaining ethical integrity under conditions that made both increasingly difficult to sustain. Outside the viewport, stars continued their ancient dance with mathematical precision that offered no guidance for the human choices that would determine Earth's place among them.